Good morning to you guys on Zoom. We're gonna wait another 3, 4 minutes, allow some other people to show up. Good morning, and then we'll get started.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Happy it's Friday, right? Hey, it's real. I'm a realtor now. I'm loving like everything coming together. I see it. Beautiful. You wear that pin everywhere. Mm.
Yeah, sign-in sheet is in the back over there. Please take care of it so that way you get credit for being in the class. If you guys want to be super nice, I don't know how you guys do the online thing, but if you want to add the people that are online, I will show it to you in just a second.
I saw Yaritza and then.
Yes, ma'am. And Lisandra. All right, we're gonna get this party started. That's all we have. Friday. Realtors don't work on Friday.
Oh, man, you told me this now, I can go back home then?
Yeah. All right, my name is Pedro Casanova. Thank you very much for being here. I'm excited to share with you Ignite Session 9, which is about receiving and making offers. Our objective for today is going to be to go over how to write a successful offer, receive some offers to benefit your sellers, scripts you can use through the process, and lastly, set the stage for positive negotiation. Okay, I'm going to emphasize the word positive because it's key when trying to get things done successfully. So, make and receive offers, session 9. So I think now Ignite is about 12 sessions, if I'm not incorrect. So you've gone through finding business, building your database, talking to sellers, how to find sellers, finding buyers, showing houses, all that good stuff, right? So here's where we put all your hard work into one of the final key steps, which is actually getting into a contract, right? Getting us closer to that payday. But before we do that, we're going to talk about a little bit about the activities, the 10 core activities that you should have been doing throughout Ignite. So how are we doing with that? What I mean by that is the phone calls to your sphere, adding people to your database, all that exciting stuff that I see you guys really jazzed about.
It's exciting to me to see it all come together, so.
Okay.
It is, yeah, I've been contacting, trying to lose my fear of contacting people, that's what I've been working on.
Okay.
And I'm less scary now, because people have been very receptive. Like, yeah, that's great, I love how they keep your money. I just feel like they're gonna be like, you're trying to sell me something I don't wanna hear. But they've been very receptive, so I'm not so afraid anymore to approach it. So
Sorry, what is your
definitely,
name?
oh, my name is Mercedes.
Mercy. So you haven't gotten beat up yet.
No, I haven't gotten yet.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
How about everybody else?
It's going well. I mean, just been tweaking every conversation I've had. I continue to tweak. I just try to get a feel of what's working, when to present something, you know. So like, I feel like with every session of calls, I'm getting closer to, you know, being able to get a deal out of it, or, you know, make a strong proof.
Do you guys remember earlier, one of the first sessions, they talked about the goals of every conversation? You guys remember what that is? Tell me your name. Victoria. Victoria. And I'm gonna forget, by the way. Mercedes, Victoria. I'll probably ask you a couple more times. People on the web, feel free to join us. I know you guys are hiding behind the camera. Normally, I would say this is a participatory class, so you have to be on camera, but I don't want to be mean the first time we meet each other. So you guys can stay in your pajamas. It's all good. So what are the 3 goals of a conversation? If you guys don't know, it's okay, I'll tell you. But if you guys want to take a shot, right? Goal number 1, get an appointment, right? Now, truth be told, That happens a very, very, very small percentage of time, depending on who you're calling. So expect the no on that, right? Setting the right expectations will lead you to success and no disappointments. So expect a no on that. You're probably gonna get 1%. You're actually gonna set an appointment on your first conversation, right? Goal number 2 is to get a referral. Right? Also, you can expect majority no's on that as well. Right? So if we know, and I use a lot of references or analogies, right? So if we're taking shots at a basket that, you guys remember Sports Authority? Right? They used to have the baskets set up, and then you would go as a kid and grab one of the balls in the bin and shoot, and then they had a plastic lid on it, right? So if it had a plastic lid, what are the chances of making that shot? Right, so if we know we're taking shots at a basket with a plastic lid, and it has the lid on 98 times out of 100, then we should expect that the shot is not gonna go in 98 times out of 100, right? But if you still take the shot, and you hit the little plastic lid, you know you're moving closer to making a shot. Does that make sense? So that's goal number 2, get a referral. But a great amount of time, when it's initial conversation or the first couple conversations, you're not going to make that shot. So having the right expectation will eliminate the feeling of failure or disappointment, right? And goal number 3, right, is to strengthen relationship. Now here's where you can go 100 at once. Right? Strengthen relationship. So as you're calling your database and your initial Ignite period, your goal is to either get an appointment, get a referral, or strengthen conversation. Or I'm sorry, strengthen relationship.
That's what I've been doing.
Right? Because you're building the foundation for you to get business from these people at some point in time when they're ready or they know something that they're ready. Right? And I emphasize on this because here's the one thing that will, the only way you can fail at either one of those 3 things is if you don't make the attempt. Because you miss 100% of shots you don't take. Right? So hopefully that was inspiring and you get to walk away with the biggest nugget that you can take from Ignite. It's not all this stuff that's on these papers, scripts and all that stuff. All that's fantastic, but it's worth nothing if you don't take the shots. That makes sense? So for those of you that are taking shots, kudos. For those of you who are a little scared, reserved, thinking about it, we need to start taking some shots. Cool? All right. So let's get right into this thing. Who's excited about making phone calls? Do we want to make phone calls? Normally I press on this a little harder because I used to teach 1 and 2 of this thing. So I wanted to set the stage for everybody else. I don't know how it's been up to now. Have they pressed you to make phone calls? Have they kind of let you slide, let you go to the bathroom? What's
So
happened?
take 10 minutes, go make phone calls, come back, right? Algo así.
Are we actually doing it? Be honest, this is no judgment here.
I'm texting, I've been texting, I tried to make phone calls, I get voicemails, so I'll do it like, okay, maybe they're at work. But mostly with me, it's texting or my Facebook.
Okay.
feed.
This is the reason why I'm asking. We have 10 minutes allotted to reach out to people, right? Yeah, I don't want to say let's go and do it, and then we're all gonna go like this, and I sit there for 10 minutes and then we just waste 10 minutes of time. Right? So collectively, if we want to do it and we're gonna make purpose of it and make it a purposeful 10 minutes, then we can do it. If we opt, I was gonna say something I shouldn't say because it might offend somebody. So if we opt not to do it, then we could just continue with the material. So what do we want to do? Up to you guys.
Let's take continue the material.
Continue material. Continue material. Okay. You guys still put it 3?
I already made my calls this morning with him.
Awesome.
Appointments locked in.
Good for you. So are we joining or overriding?
Continue. Adelante.
No shots taken today.
No.
Okay.
Well, I called earlier, I swear, I forget earlier in the morning.
Okay.
so-
Man, you guys are cool. Before 9 a.m. That's awesome. All right. So how do we get our head in the game? Okay. The offer is the process of moving from a buyer-seller agreement to actual sales contract, right? Hopefully all you guys are signing agreements with your buyers and sellers that they're going to be working with you, and you guys are not just, marketing properties that you don't have an agreement on, or showing property to people that are buyers. So we're taking it from, hey, I hired you to work for me, to now actually writing and presenting offers on their behalf and getting them under contract. So this is the way this works. The buyer is going to go ahead and make an offer, and then the seller is going to receive it, and you're going to have three choices here. Okay. Choice number one, which is the one that ideally we all want, is the one in the middle, which is that the seller accepts the offer. And then we begin the contract to close process. Now, more often than not, that's not the one that happens, right? Unless we are proactive and you can call a listing agent and say, hey, Mr. Listing Agent, before I submit this offer, I'd like to know what is important to your seller throughout this transaction. Is the price, is there any special terms that they're looking for that I should include in the offer, et cetera, right? That's a tip. You might want to write that down, right? Is there anything that the seller is particularly looking for? Here's why I mentioned this. You may have a seller that wants to move in 30 days, right? And that's important to them. So a quick closing might be important to them. You may have a seller that needs to go find their next home, right? So a long closing may be something that they're looking for. Or maybe they're looking to sell and be able to rent back. Yeah, we won't know all that stuff unless we ask, right? Large down payment might be something that they're looking for. Short inspection period might be something that they're looking for. So any little detail that you can get from the listing agent while you prepare the offer of what's important to the seller will make your offer look more attractive. Can we agree on that?
I have a question.
Awesome.
I heard previously that some sellers are looking for a higher down payment. What's the difference between making a bigger down payment? I mean, if the people are solid and they have like a good, like also 95% things that they're gonna get approved by the bank.
Mhm.
So what difference does it make? Is it because it's trying to keep the deposit? I mean, if they
Skin in the
don't-
game. If I have a $1,000 deposit, right, I'm buying a $500,000 house, my commitment to get that to closing, in other words, what I have to lose if I don't perform according to the contract is $1,000, right? So when it comes to a decision point that I have to make a decision that could be painful for me, right? All I have at risk is $1,000
as a buyer.
as a buyer, because you asked me about the deposit.
Correct. No, but in terms, no, I'm sorry, the sellers, some sellers, they ask for all, how much deposit they're gonna make.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
That's what I'm saying. So if we're going through a negotiation, right? And we get to a point where, I'll give you an example where this could happen. You were pre-approved and your payment at a 3% rate was gonna be $2,000, right? Now, when you got closer to closing, the rate changed just a little bit. Now, you're still approved, but your payment is now $2,200. You're not happy paying $2,200 because you wanna pay $2,000. But the reality is, the new interest rate now says you have to pay $2,200. So now I'm at a decision point. Do I want to close or do I not want to close? Right? And if I decide not to close, I'm gonna breach a contract and I'm gonna give up my deposit. If my deposit is only $1,000, I could look at this and say, okay, if I buy this house, an extra $200 a month over 5 years, blah, 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 it's X amount. So I could deposit shows commitment on the buyer side that I'm committed to carry out this contract. So it's more skin in the game, right? If I make this decision, I'm gonna lose $10, or if I make this decision, I have to give up one of my children. Essentially, more skin in the game, that's all it is. So if you're representing a seller, you want to have the largest deposit possible. It's not about keeping it, it's just about making sure that buyer is committed and they're willing to carry this all the way through. And if they don't perform, their pain is gonna be good. And not necessarily to punish, but it's just to encourage them to perform.
Lessons will be learned.
All right. Option 2 is over on your left. I have to turn so I can make sure. Counter offer, right? This is probably the most common. Depending on how you submit the offer, there's gonna be something that the seller is gonna say, hey, I love everything, yet we want to change this term. Short inspection, more deposit, closing, maybe a little bit more money, etc. Something will change, right? All that means is that they're gonna accept some terms will be changed, and it'll be pushed back to your buyer side for the buyer to either accept, reject, or recounter those terms, right? And then over to your right is where the seller rejects the offer. So the buyer agent contacts the listing agent to learn more. Don't assume no means no. So the seller is going to say, hey, we're just not interested in your offer. Like it says there, I highly recommend you contact that agent and find out, hey, how come our offer was rejected? So you can get some more information. Now I'm gonna switch to the listing side real quick. Never, ever, ever reject an offer for the same reason that's there, right? The only offers, and I'll tell you, we ask our sellers for permission. The only offers we reject right up front is from these investors that, you know, are looking for rehab properties, and we have a property that's completely remodeled, looks beautiful, does not need any rehab, and they're offering you $100,000 below asking price in a market where we're gonna get multiple offers and then sell it for more than asking. So to save us the time and the seller the time of having to send the offer, then saying it's rejected, I just ask for permission to reject it. But other than that, never ever reject an offer, especially if you only have one. If you have multiples, your seller may choose one and then the other ones get turned down. Yet, what I mean is never say no. Always encourage the seller, if we're not accepting one and we only have one, not to say no, but yet counter to what terms are favorable to them, right? Just like a seller's trying to get a great deal, the buyer's trying to get the best deal. Sometimes the buyers don't understand how the market works, and the agent has to submit the offer the way the buyer wants. Yet when you come back and say no, your offer of 270 is not acceptable. We're asking 300. We want to counter at 298. You may get that deal done, right? Because they just wanted to take a shot and see if they can make it, right? Any questions on that so far?
Do you always secure a backup offer?
No.
Do you have multiple?
Not really.
I mean, wouldn't it be better to do so though? I mean,
It depends. If we have multiples, I like to leave the multiples open, because then I could go back if I have to and kind of renegotiate and pick the best one out of them. The backup offer is good if you can lock it in. Yeah, it all depends on how you want to work that. You do have to do a backup offer agreement, and there is a time frame that's put on there, and the buyer can come back and say, hey, we found something else, we're backing out. So it's almost like having a job where you go 9 to 5 and you feel secure, but they could tell you tomorrow, don't come back. So very important through this negotiation process, right? And most of us agents, most agents don't do a great job. And sometimes even the best of us, we let it get to us, emotions, right? You got to keep your emotions out of the deal. You're the professional. The buyer and the seller are highly emotional. This is an emotionally charged transaction for them, right? They're nervous, they're scared, they're frustrated, depending on what position they are in the transaction or who they are. We have to be the ones that kind of calm that down, calm the excitement, the anxiety, the pressure, all that, and help them make the best decision possible, right? What does that look like? We got an offer for $40,000 below asking. Don't call the seller and say, we just got this ridiculous offer. I can't even believe they offered this, right? We call them, we say, congratulations. We just got the first offer on your house, right? This is the price, boom, 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 boom. You go over the details. I encourage that we counter to something that's acceptable to us, right? So a little different. Make sense?
Let me, quick question.
Go for it.
On the, when you reject an offer, when you rejecting an offer, do you have to send that in writing? Because you know, when they send an offer, they give you like 24 to like, what, 72 hours?
Yep.
Like, most of the time?
All right, so great question. Normally, we don't reject, especially in today's market, we're getting 7, 8, 9 offers. I'm sending them an email saying, hey, thank you for your offer and your interest. Thank you for your patience and allowing our seller to review all the offers. They have decided to go with somebody else. What I am doing as a courtesy is I'm letting them know why we chose whatever offer we chose, right? Because often, if you guys are submitting offers, you're gonna get a rejection, then you go back to your buyer and you go, hey, they pick somebody else. They're like, hey, but why? And if you don't have any info, there's not a whole lot to say, creates a little bit of frustration. So I'm letting them know, hey, we decided to go with a cash offer. We decided to go with an offer that offered much higher than asking and guaranteed money over appraisal. So they have an idea and they have something to give to the buyer.
The courtesy, basically.
Yeah, that's a courtesy.
But you're not obligated to send anything like, just like.
My email should be suffice. Right? That's how we do it. The other thing that I'm gonna tell you, the offer acceptance that's on the contract, right? I believe it's page 1, somewhere in that section there. That's really to protect your buyer, right? It's used as a negotiation tool, but in a hot seller's market, that really gives you no leverage. So understand, that's really to protect your buyer that says, Mercedes? All right. Mercedes, I'm giving you this offer and you have 24 hours to accept it. If you don't respond within those 24 hours and you take 72 hours, but now you send me an executed contract, well, my buyer is no longer obligated to that contract because it's past my 24 hours, right? The way we use it normally is, hey, if you don't accept it in 24 hours, we walk. Well, when they have 8 offers to look over, that's not a whole lot of leverage there. Make sense? So understand what it is. You can use it as a great tool if you're submitting multiple offers for a buyer because the market is so competitive. So if you put 24 hours there and you go submit 2, 3 offers in a period of 2, 3 days, if they don't respond within those 24 hours, you're no longer obligated to accept. Make sense? All right. So we're going to prepare to write the offer, and present the offer to the listing agent. So page 17. Actually, before we go to page 17, sorry, the slides go a little bit faster than the material. Page 13 of your material should have a checklist for preparing the offer. Okay. And very important, obtain the buyer's pre-approval letter from the lender. This you should get before you show properties. And make sure that your buyers are approved. If not, you're just an unpaid Uber driver. Okay. So you want to have that pre-approval. Anytime you submit an offer, you want to send proof of funds or a pre-approval letter, depending on if you're buying cash or finance. But it's gonna solidify that you've done your homework and make sure that this buyer can actually purchase the house. Do a comparable market analysis. So review the market, make sure that, hey, this home is worth X or potentially be worth X. They're asking why, do they match, right? And then make a recommendation to your buyer. This is what potentially the home will be worth. Although in today's market, it's kind of crazy and all over the place, but you should have an idea, right? So that way you don't have you set prices, you set the right expectation. We're gonna review tax records. So you're gonna look at that, make sure that your seller's information and all that is accurate when you put it on the contract. Ensure the property is still available. And today is a little different, right? Because properties are going off the market pretty quickly. Look, my suggestion, write the offer, send it in. Okay. That's if you're working buyers, that's the name of the game. Quick to show, write the offer, send it in. Right? We get so many phone calls from agents. Oh, is the property still available? I don't want to waste my time and drive over there. Look, if you consider your job a waste of time, go do something else. Right? Right now that you're calling me still available. We have 3 offers on the table. My seller may say, dude, I just had a cup of coffee. I want to decide to accept an offer right now. You're showing it in the afternoon. By the time you get there, it might be gone. Yet, you got to be proactive, right? We get the same thing. I don't want to waste my time and write an offer if you have other offers. And you're doing a terrible job representing a buyer, go do something else. There's now hiring signs like everywhere. Any questions on that?
Does the MLS update 24 hours, like if they decide like the listing agent updates at 2 in the morning?
Yeah, it updates instantaneously.
Okay, so it's not like,
Right.
okay.
Well, you also have to understand this, right? You may send an offer or review offers to the seller to review, right? And then go into an appointment. So at 3 o'clock, the property is available. You were in an appointment for 2 hours, right? In Homestead. 5 o'clock, between 3 and 5 that you were in that appointment, the seller accepted an offer. You got out of that appointment at 5 o'clock. Now you're late to pick up your kids. You gotta jump in the car. You're racing down the highway. You finally picked up by the time you get home, 7 o'clock at night, you gotta cook dinner, all this other nonsense, right? I'm like really close to the people online. Sorry. So you may not get to update the MLS until the next day. We also have lives. This whole 365 24/7. If somebody told you that to be a realtor, you have to do that. Bullshit. Yes. Right? So you may not get to update that until the next morning. You get me? So sometimes that happens, but it should update as soon as somebody puts it pen. Now the MLS now does, oh, if it's pending and whatever, and submit a complaint, feel free to do that. I have a difference of opinion on that, but life happens, right? It's not like we're sitting by the computer, the seller accepted, boom, and you're clicking it right away. There's some leeway there. All right. When speaking with the listing agent, build rapport, gather as much information about the seller and the property as you can. I kind of mentioned that. Get as much details about what's important to the seller to submit an offer. So that way you can prepare the offer as the most acceptable possible, right? Inquire about the activity on the property. If it's fair priced in a nice neighborhood, there's a lot of activity. There's probably multiple offers. Just submit your highest and best. That's my suggestion. Obtain seller's disclosure statement. Some agents will have it on the MLS, some agents won't. I say submit your offer, whatever documentation they're asking, okay? And then the seller's disclosure can get taken care of after you're under contract. And then find out if there have been any other offers. You could assume there are, right? And it's all about communication. When you went over the buyer consultation piece of Ignite, it's all about setting the right expectation with your buyers, right? You're going into an aggressive competitive market. We're gonna have to potentially offer over asking price. We're potentially gonna have to guarantee some money over appraisal. We're gonna have to move quick in inspections, right? So you set the stage and all those things, and we just have to be ready to compete, right? Less disappointment in the end. Here's a suggestion that's not in that sheet. Read the MLS listing, right? We all have different ways that we work. There's not like one standard way. And we build our own ways of doing things for convenience, right? So for example, some people will use DocuSign, sign agreements, and DocuSign allows you the opportunity to email that forward to whoever or to share. Some people use Loop. Other people like to download and send it an attachment, right? Believe it or not, we got an offer via fax the other day, right? No, that's what most kids nowadays say, right? Yet the listing side also has a process that they follow, right? There's usually instructions around that process, right? Like for example, we ask all our submit offers to a particular email because the offer comes in, our admin staff gets it, confirms that they received it, they send you a, hey, we received your offer, they upload it to DocuSign when we review them, they upload it to another system, so that way our agents can focus on selling, and then they just go back and look at the offers that are reviewed. And then we also put attachments on the MLS that say, hey, use this to complete with the offer you're submitting. So now I have 5 offers, right? Yet agent 2 decided to email it to our co-agent. Agent 3 decided to email it to me. One of them didn't include the attachments. The other one didn't include this, right? So when we're reviewing stuff, that comes into play with, dude, this person doesn't know how to follow instructions or doesn't pay attention to detail, right? How are we going to work throughout the transaction when we need to make sure that they're doing their end to get this deal to close, right? Or worst case, yesterday I went fishing, right? Spent some quality time with my dad. I didn't look at my email. There's about 700 unread emails because I'm sure you guys get them too because the world thinks we're millionaires and they want to sell you everything when you get your real estate license, right? So if you emailed me an offer yesterday to my email, it's still there unread. You didn't follow instructions. Our sellers might be making a decision on that property today. Well, your offer didn't get looked at, right? I don't mean in a bad way. It's just, you know, you were supposed to go on the highway and the inside lane, you decided to go on the shoulder. You know what I'm saying? So very important, you read the instructions, you submit the offers the right way so they don't get lost. Especially if you're submitting offers to foreclosures and short sales, if they start to pop up, usually those agents, because of the workload and the fact that they can pay very little for it, they have a system built out. And if you don't follow it, your offers may not be getting looked at. Okay. All right, page 14, write the offer. Make sure that your buyer knows that all checks, earnest money, etc., the money needs to be available, right? So when you make that deposit, the money is available, right? Things that are very important in your offer is going to be your names. And make sure the names are correct. Make sure that the address is correct. Some people are very particular about addresses. Like people that live in Pinecrest, they might be on the last street of Pinecrest right before it gets to Palmetto Bay, like 135. And if you put Palmetto Bay on their address, they get really emotional about that. It's happened to me, that's what I'm telling you. But then you look like you don't pay attention to detail, makes you look bad, right? So make sure all that is correct. Make sure you have an offer price, an escrow deposit. My recommendation on the escrow should be at least 3% of the offer price, right? Most people are financing 96%, 96.5% or less. So they should have that difference there. But if you can't get to 3%, right, nowadays 350 and up, at least 10 grand, right, of escrow. So you put escrow, usually we put made within 3 days, or you can have it accompany the offer. Yeah, that's not, in today's day and age, that's not very realistic because a lot of times it gets wired. So within 3 days, you want to put there who the escrow company is. Make sure that that's filled out. The percentage that they're financing, and then the balance. These are tips to save you some time. Although if you use Form Simplicity does the math for you. Yeah. We have access to DocuSign, so you can leave that stuff blank. When you load it to DocuSign, go get signatures, you can put the information in. On the bottom where it says amount or remaining amount or whatever, usually I put balance, right? Because it's offer price minus escrow minus financing, and then there's a number. Here's why I put balance, because if we counter that sales price and that number on the bottom is exact, then all those numbers change. And instead of just having to scratch one off and initial one field, you have to do 2 or 3. So it's just less stuff in case if you put balance there. If you choose to or not, there's your offer acceptance line. Again, representing the buyer, I recommend you put it just to give you flexibility. And then your closing date. Okay? And you put that at the bottom. I believe that's all in page 1. Section 2, actually, I'm gonna jump off the Zoom just a second, guys, because I want to look for something and go over our most common offer. Have you guys reviewed a contract yet or no?
No.
What are you doing to me? All right, and that was easy enough. All right, can you guys see that on Zoom?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so this is not what I was looking for. This is not the latest version. All right, this will do good enough. All right, so we covered up to here. You're gonna put a closing date. You can do on or before. You can. Some people like to put 45 days from effective, etc. This section.
I'm sorry, what would be the right way to do it then? I mean, like, does it matter? So what happened if I, for example, I submit an offer and then I send, closing day will be August 31st, for example. If something goes wrong, I mean, do I have to go back in the contract and just.
You do an addendum to extend it if you need to. But both of you have to get, at that point, you have mutual acceptance from both parties.
So in order, so what would be the best way to avoid that? Just
Pick a date that the lender feels comfortable, that the buyer feels comfortable meeting, right? So if you're financing, you're probably looking at no less than 30 days, more than likely 45 days, right? If you're buying cash and it's really only subject to title, you should be able to hit the 30-day window. So if you're financing, I would say no less than 45 days. So section 6, in your current contract, it looks a little bit different, but section 6, where it says occupancy and possession, right? And I share this with you because you learn this through experience. Most of the time this is overlooked because it doesn't impact, it happens in a small percentage of transactions. In the new contract, there's another added paragraph that has a little checkbox that you can mark, right? But this says the property is going to be delivered vacant the day of closing, right? If there's a tenant living in that property and the tenant is planning on staying, you need to check off that little second paragraph. And I say this when you represent the seller, more importantly, right? Because if you don't check off that little paragraph and you say with the other agent, give me your name again? Victoria. I was gonna call you Veronica. Yeah, I was close. So Victoria and I agreed, hey, you know what? My sellers need an extra 30 days. And Victoria's like, hey, that's cool, no worries. We'll let the tenant stay there for an extra 30 days, right? then we sign the contract, we don't check off that little box. What's on paper is what matters, right? What Victoria and I discussed doesn't mean anything. So now if the buyer says, hey, no, our contract says I'm moving in on this day, technically, contractually, the tenant's supposed to be out on that day, right? So had this happened to me also, the buyer wanted to back out of the contract, right? Because they no longer wanted to buy the house. The seller being nice told the tenant, oh, it's okay, you can stay an extra week, right? So we got to the day of closing and the tenant hadn't moved out. So what was the buyer able to do?
Back out.
Hey, you're in breach. The tenant is still there. Now they did a couple other savvy things to get there and be able to be in breach, right? But essentially it was the tenant was moving out 2 days later. They hadn't moved out yet, so technically, you know, I'm walking away and I can walk away with my deposit because you didn't execute on the contract, right? So learn from my mistakes and make sure that you do that correctly. Section 7, buyer may assign and be released of liability. Buyer may assign and still hold liability or may not assign. Usually we want to see that not assign. If they're owner occupied, some investors may want to assign it. When usually, and if they're going to assign, I would say they still hold liability is the only way that I would do it if I was representing a seller. This happens more in the wholesale game, right? But essentially I found a deal and I want to find a buyer. If they check off the first one, there's no liability, I'm not able to find that buyer. And then, hey, I just want to, well, I find the buyer, but that buyer can't close, I'm scot-free, right? But if I find that buyer can't close, now I still have obligation to close if option 2 is selected. And if they cannot assign, then they can't assign the contract.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes,
on
sir.
that?
Mhm.
So let's say I wanted to part-time wholesale a property, right?
Mhm.
And I was able to get somebody under contract, right?
Right.
Assignable. Could I market that on the MLS?
You
as
can.
an agent?
Mhm.
As a listing,
Mhm.
even though it's,
Now you have, technically, now you have the authority to do so because you have, I forget the word, but essentially you have control of the property.
So you want to check off what now? May sign?
If you're representing the buyer, usually you're gonna check off may not assign. All right, financing section. I'm gonna give you a couple of tips here. If you're buying cash, option A is fine, okay? If they're financing, option B is what we want to check off. Very important, you know, we're doing conventional or FHA and select that, right? And mainly is because of your reputation as an agent with dealing with other agents and also to protect your client. But sometimes agents like to get creative, right? And they think, oh, if it's an FHA offer, a VA, they're not going to accept it, so I'm going to put conventional, and then we're going to do a little switcheroo, right? That's just going to give you a bad reputation. Don't do that nonsense. Effective date. So here it plays 2 ways. I'm sorry. Loan commitment plays 2 ways, right? If you represent a buyer, you want that number to be as long as possible. What does that do? It gives your buyer more time to get an approval, right? Often, this defaults to 30 days, right? Often agents put a closing date here that's 30 days or less, and then leave this blank. And it essentially means the buyer can go all the way to the day of closing, and if the lender says, hey, dude, you didn't have enough money in the bank, you can't close, they could walk away with their deposit, right? So when you represent the seller, you want to make sure that this date is shorter than the closing date because you want to protect your seller's time, right? So normally we want that to be when I say we, I'm talking about my team and I, this is how we do it. We want it to be at least 9 days shorter than the closing. Yeah. So for financed offers, we want to see 21 days there. That's what we usually look for, right? What does that do? One, it puts a little bit of a fire in the lender's tushy that they need to work diligently and get that loan approved. 2, if that buyer, for whatever reason, is kind of a shaky buyer and we don't feel too comfortable about him and you know, we're hearing a lot of things that are red flags. It just eliminated 9 days of us potentially having no closing, right? And being able to go back in the market if we choose to. 3, once we get to the loan commitment period, here's what happens. The buyer has the obligation to present a loan commitment. It could be conditional. It could say, hey, we're still pending title, et cetera, right? Or a denial. If the buyer agrees to move forward with a conditional loan commitment, or the language says if they don't present one and we agree to move forward, it's assumed that the loan is approved, right? So once you move past that date, the only thing that they can back out of the contract for without being liable to a deposit is appraisal, title issues, inspection should already be long and gone, okay? So it's appraisal and title issues. If they lost their job the day before closing, man, that sucks. Yes, they still have a contractual obligation. If they can't close, then your seller's entitled to collect that deposit for time lost. They decided to change jobs. Sometimes that happens, right? Or they were super excited and they went to buy all the furniture
I was just having a talk with my husband this morning.
to, you know, put in the house that they haven't bought yet. And then the lender does a credit check the day before closing. They go, hey, dude, now you owe El Dorado $40,000. Now threw off your ratios and you can't close, right? Past that loan commitment period, they're responsible for all the silly decisions they make, right? And there's money attached to it. Fixed, adjustable, or a fixed or adjustable rate. Now, I'm gonna give you both sides of the coin again, okay? This one actually has money. The traditional as is that we have now doesn't have money here. However, it does have rate, okay? There's gonna be a line that says fixed rate, adjustable rate, or the prevailing rate, or fixed and adjustable. Then there's one where you can actually put the rate. You see where it says an interest rate not to exceed X, right? The example we were talking about earlier. They were approved because their max payment is 2,000, and in order for them to get to that 2,000 payment, they need to have a rate of 3% or below. If you, as a buyer agent, put 3% there, and now for whatever reason the market went crazy, now the current rate is 3.5%. Now your buyer, you're protecting your buyer because now they can say, hey, the rate changed per the contract. I was buying if the rate was 3% or less. So now I get the choice to say I'm gonna close or I get to walk away. That makes sense? If you leave it blank, it's prevailing rate. Doesn't matter what the rate is, as long as the bank can approve you, you're good to go. So if you represent the seller, you want that to be blank. If you represent the buyer, and we have a tight window where an extra $50 a month is gonna, you know, put them in a bad spot, then we wanna put a rate there. Okay? Here's what's potentially going to happen to you. Most agents that you're gonna deal with are gonna have no clue what that means. And if you have to use that exit strategy, they're gonna get pissed off. They're gonna argue with you. They're gonna tell you know what you're doing. But it's just creating another avenue to exit if you have to. Make sense? I wouldn't necessarily explain that to the buyer if you have a buyer that's shaky, that's not sure if they want to buy, they're not sure if they want to buy, right? You're just creating opportunity to be able to exit. And then the term. Again, the more specific you get with this, the more avenues to exit you'll have, right? So 30 years is usually the standard. Loan application within 5 days. Any questions so far? All right. Next page. Buyer and seller obligations of the contract. This contract is pretty fair. It throws some obligation on the buyer, throws some obligation on the seller. Always when reviewing these things, make sure that you review these 2 lines, that nobody's added anything there that you were not aware of, right? This line here and this line there. So if you represent the buyer, or the seller, you want to make sure that nothing was added there that's giving them some obligation that they shouldn't necessarily be obligated to. And the same thing goes to the buyer.
There should be a blank in all the time, like, should just be a word, like, always. put
Well,
those-
so something that's customary, people that represent buyers are oftentimes putting here, buyer will pay a commission or buyer will pay a transaction fee to whatever, right? What you don't want is that something was added there for your client that you didn't add, right? For example, we've had things added there that, oh, seller will pay X amount for whatever nonsense, right? We represent the seller as like, why are you putting that there? Something that you're gonna see common nowadays because commissions are getting tighter and agents are getting creative. There's probably gonna be something there where you have the buyer and they'll put here, which I've seen it in the MLS already. Oh, buyer will pay XYZ Realty seller's transaction fee, which is BS. Right? So you just need to be aware of those things. Title evidence, usually 5 days before closing. Understand what these mean. Seller designates closing agent. They're gonna pay for owner's title policy. That's a percentage of the title policy. That's gonna be anywhere between $1,500 to $2,500 additional cost for your seller. Yet they have the option to choose a title agent. Option B is that the buyer is gonna designate the title agent, right, and pay for some additional fees as this opposite. Or most common used in Miami-Dade is this one. The seller is going to provide a copy of the survey. They're going to get an extended policy, etc. Here's my recommendation. If you're going to allow the other side to choose who the closing agent is going to be, you find out what the fees are ahead of time. Okay. In this market, you may not have an option or time to find out what the fees are. So I would choose option 3. Okay. And here's why I say this. Miami market is very creative, right? So, hey, we'll use our title company. Great. The settlement fee for their title company to your client is $1,500 when you can get it out there for $800 to $900, right? So you're looking out for your client's best interest. Just make sure that before you select something, you know what the impact of that is. Yep. Home warranty, pretty self-explanatory. Buyer, seller, not applicable. Most common is going to be not applicable, but it is a negotiation tool. So somebody says, hey, the AC is out of its useful life. We want you to replace the AC. Well, in that case, AC could last another 5 years. We don't know, right? So rather than spending $5,000 on a new AC, you can get them a 2-year home warranty that covers the AC, and that may cost $700. Special assessments. Option A is the fairest, where seller shall pay installments prior due to closing, and then the buyer pays the installments after. Option B says the seller will pay the installments prior to closing in full. If nothing is checked, then option A is the default. So you know, in our standard as is contract, I don't know, this one is from 2010, so it's outdated. But option A will be the default. Essentially what that means is this. Hey, we're buying this house or condo, etc. There's an assessment because they're going to replace all the roofs in the buildings, right? And that assessment is $2,000 per unit. It's going to be $100 a month for the next 20 months. It starts July of 2021, right? So that means that there's another 19 months of whatever the assessment is, the $100 a month. Now, if the new buyer's moving in, right? Technically, they're going to be the ones to enjoy the new prolonged roof, right? So it all depends on where you look at it, right? So if your seller is not getting the benefit of the price of the new roof, then the buyer should really pay the assessment, right? That's one example. Or very common today's day and age, like white green, right? People do white green, and even though that's on the taxes, but it's still an assessment. They improve their windows and they improve the roof, and it gets billed, it's a loan, right? And then they go sell the house, but because of the white green or because of the roof and the windows new feature, they sell the house for $30,000 more than what it would be worth, right? Then the seller should be the one to pay that assessment in full because they're taking the monetary value of the improvement.
Same thing with the solar panels, right? Because it's also something that I've been seeing that, when they have like, those solar panels on the top of the roof,
Mhm.
usually it's like about $40,000.
Right,
So then in that case, the seller should be paid for that.
should be,
He's already installing the house before the buyer got there to buy the property, correct?
right. If you're paying the benefit of the improvement in the purchase price, then yeah, the seller should pay for it.
Yeah, 'cause
Now, white green makes you pay for it at closing, so maybe that wasn't the best example, yet just to give you an example of what it looks like. I don't know how the solar panels thing works exactly, but I'm sure it's pretty similar. All right, then you have all these different paragraphs in the contract. I'm not gonna go over all that stuff because a lot of it is just reading stuff. You can read that on your own. Inspections. Default is 15 days. If you want to be competitive in today's market, you got to be somewhere around 5 to 7, maybe 10. Should be able to get an inspection done within 24 to 48 hours if you move quickly. And basically what this says is the buyer's going to have the right to look at the property, inspect the property. And then you have the opportunity to ask for credits, or essentially really is to walk away if there's something dramatically wrong with the property, right? In the as-is contract, the seller's not obligated to fix a thing. So we just want, how we tell our clients is, look, we're gonna look at stuff. If you don't like the rug, or you don't like the walls, or you think it's dirty, whatever it is, we're gonna include that in our initial offer price. So they're asking 500, we're gonna say we're offering you for 490 because this and this and this. The inspection is for the major items only, what's behind the drywall, right? Plumbing, electrical, foundation, roof, and all that. We're not gonna go back and nitpick because, oh, there was a cracked tile, so I want $5,000 because I have to replace all the tiles, right? We saw the cracked tile, we'll make our offer according to the cracked tile. Let's see, some more reading stuff. There's a lot of pages of reading stuff in these contracts, but I highly recommend that you get familiar with them. And then we get to the end. Additional terms, if you use the contract from the office, it's like 7 paragraphs of stuff right here. Get familiar with those terms. I think there's a lot of language in it that's just unnecessary, but yes, ma'am. But it's all gonna be here. Here, what we add is if you charge a transaction fee, you add it here. If there's anything additional you wanna put here, you add it here. Understand the contract. There's so many agents that put so many things here that it's just like that language is already covered in the contract. Why are you adding additional stuff? Now, important, all these addendums, right? So there's like 3 versions of contracts out there. The as is, all the addendums are named CR dash and then the letter, right? That's a tip. You might not write that down.
Can you repeat that again, please?
CR dash and then the letter.
That's on the as-is contract?
Yeah. Here's why that is important. And I see this probably around 60% of the time. They're financing FHA, right? And they send us an as-is contract with an FHA addendum for the CRISP contract, right? The FHA addendum is referencing paragraphs and lines in a different contract, right? So you see how that would be like you putting on 2 pair of shoes, and one, you put on a dress shoe and it's 2. Does that make sense? Because the addendum says this paragraph overrides such and such language on paragraph 8, line whatever. Well, paragraph 8 on this contract might be talking about the beautiful flowers in the garden and not about FHA. So very important that you, when you go search for the addendum, you're looking for the right addendum and the right letter, right? There's certain things that are most common. One is gonna be addendum P, which is if the property is built before 1978, it's the lead-based paint. The FHA addendum you may need, which is E, if they're doing financing, FHA or VA, you're going to need it, it's gonna be required by the lender. So that's addendum E. And then if you have condominiums or homeowners associations, you're gonna need addendum A or B. Those are the ones that are most commonly used. Okay,
And excuse me,
yes, ma'am.
what CR stands for?
That's a great question. I have no idea.
Okay, so just wanted to,
That's just what that's just how they abbreviate it.
okay, thank you.
Pedro,
Yes, ma'am.
you
Yes,
said,
sir. Sorry.
I said three kind of contracts, right? As is.
Right.
What's the other two?
The other one is called Crisp, and then there's another one by the board that, like, if you find it used, I'm just kidding. Like, it's very, very uncommon. I just don't know which one it is. The other one is CRSP, which is what we call Crisp, and I think it's CRSP-13. There's a big difference in that contract. That one includes some items like it's, well, under the inspection area, it says it has some blanks, but it defaults to, if you leave it blank, that the seller is going to pay 1.5% towards wood destroying organisms, 1.5% towards repairs, and 1.5% towards something else. So it has that as a default. The other big difference, the as is allows for you as a buyer to do a visual inspection of the property yourself, right? So it's really it was really an investor's contract, right? Do a visual property inspection yourself and say, hey, you know what, in second thought, we need to replace carpets, replace paint, and I no longer want to buy the house, and you're good, right? Under the verbiage of the contract. The other contract actually requires a licensed inspector to inspect the property. So there's a little bit more obligation for the buyer. Kevin, right?
Yes.
This last section here is what you were referring to about seller rejects or counters. So if you are gonna counter and actually write the counter, we negotiate a lot of this stuff verbally or via email. And then once we agreed on terms, then we send you the actual document. Then here you would check with that one, yeah, you counter. And then signatures. Here's another pet peeve. I want to volunteer. You guys can see this, right? Can somebody read this right here for me? Any of you, even if my reading is not great. So who would like?
Broker, listing and cooperating brokers of any named below collectively broker are the only brokers entitled to compensation in connection with this contract. Instruction to closing agent. Seller and buyer direct closing agent to disperse at closing the full amount of the brokerage fees as specified in separate brokerage agreements with the parties and cooperative agreements between the brokers, except to the extent broker has retained such fees from escrow funds.
All right, hold on one second. We're gonna pause right there. So it says closing of the full amount of the brokerage fees as specified in separate agreements, right? We caught that. I just want to highlight that. Cool. All right, you can finish.
I'm reading again. You said, okay, where was that?
The last sentence.
This contract shall not modify any MLS or other offer of compensation made by seller or listing broker to cooperating brokers.
Okay. So here's why I'm pointing this out. There was another contract that existed or may still exist that here, right? It had the broker's information, and next to it, it had the compensation percentage, right? And somehow our industry get this all confused, and everybody wants to put here their name and then a percentage right next to it, right? What does it say right there? The contract shall not modify any MLS or other compensation made by seller or listing broker to cooperating brokers. All that crap does is create confusion. Because then you get some knucklehead title person, right?
Who sees that there?
That doesn't want to read that language right there or goes, oh no, but that's not how we do it. Right. And then they're asking you for another bunch of BS when it's, hey, this is the MLS listing. It says we're paying you 3% or 2.5 or 2 or 1 or half or whatever it is. And here's my listing contract that says this is what the seller's paying me. Right? Oh, but on the contract it says 3%. I could put 100% there. It doesn't matter, right? So save yourself some aggravation and save yourself some time. Your name and the broker name. Okay?
Yeah, I've seen that a lot, like they put like.
All the time. All the time. Now, here's a tip. When you go show a property, print out the MLS listing before you go show the property, save it in wherever you save it, right? So you have it. Just in the rare case, that percentage that's being offered to you as an agent happens to change at any point in time. It's not common, but it may happen. Just put it there. And I don't mean that they're doing it maliciously. I just mean they put 3% there and then figured out, holy moly, we made a mistake, and then reduce it to 2.5. But by that time you showed the property and presented an offer, well, you're entitled to what was originally there. Okay. That was a little rant of mine. Because it creates confusion, right? And then the sellers see that and they're like, hey, but what about, right? It just, or the buyer.
Why is that a company doesn't sound like?
You want her to sound like this? All right, so that's the contract, the as is contract. We can't go over all of them for essence of time, but that's what the as is contract is. Do we have any questions? I know I gave you a lot of information, but do we have any questions at all about the contract before we move on to the next thing? Would that be a no?
Is there a class for like, that they just talk about contracts? I mean, just, I know like you said, there's a lot of reading on the contract, because I know that only like, out of the 12 pages, we only have to do it like some like 1, 2, probably 4.
Well, it went over the fields that you fill out.
Right.
Here's my recommendation to you. I believe that there is a contract class that we offer here in the office. But my recommendation to you is print out the contract, right? Go over, sorry, I'm trying to get to, go over the contract with a highlighter, highlight anything that you don't understand. And then if you're in coaching, go to your coach, ask questions. If you're not in coaching, go to Marietta and ask questions. If you don't get Marietta, find somebody in the office, ask questions. You can come to my office and say, hey, I have this question about the contract. Could you help me out? And the answer is going to be always yes. It might be, hey, right now is not a good time. Can we schedule a time, right? Or whatever it is. But you can definitely, get the information. But I would highly recommend, and here's where I tell the agents that work with me. Be proactive and actually review the stuff first. And then if you have questions, we'll go over it. Don't just be like, hey, I don't understand the contract. Can you explain it? Right?
It's not gonna
Yes, sir.
be, I'm just curious, like, you know how like a lease, you have the contract to lease a CPL, right?
Mhm.
And then you get a lease.
Right.
It's like supersedes it. When buying a property, it's just gonna be this contract, that's it. There's no other version coming out later.
If it updates at
Okay,
some
that's
point, no, so if we use this 2010 contract, as long as both parties agree, that's what it is, right? It doesn't matter if there's a 2019 version or 2018 version, because you're not using that version.
No, I
Right.
mean, like that would be the contract, like,
Yes,
so there's not like, later on, they'll present a different contract.
no, no. All right, other things that are recommended when writing an offer. Cover letter, right? This is like the smoosh smoosh letters, right? You can include a picture of the family with their puppies and their kids and all this other stuff, and why this home is important to them. This humanizes the transaction for the seller. Believe it or not, some sellers have a huge attachment. And we have one now that she chose, the buyer she chose, because when they came to see the house, the people have an elderly mother that lives with them and her father lives with her. So she could see how that one room that her father uses will be beneficial to the lady. And she just wanted, them to get the house. So it helps. Include a cover letter to summarize the offer. In my world, that looks like an email that says, hey, Kevin, here's an offer, these are the details, and I highlight the important details. Here are the documents that are included. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know. And that's pretty much it, an additional to the contract that we already went over. Any questions on that? All right, we just went over the contract, so I'm briefly gonna go over page 15. Just kind of went over the highlighted points, but price and terms, conveyances, earnest money, time of seller acceptance, financing, buyer pre-approval letter. The loan approval usually comes after the fact, okay? But those are the important things that you should include when writing an offer. Send proof of funds, send a pre-approval letter, okay? You need to support your offer. Here's what happens, dude. People that are listing houses right now, when it comes to reviewing offers, it's a few hours of time because we're getting 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 offers. Unless your offer is like really, really, really good and it like stands out, right? Is a 10 out of 10 and you forgot to include the approval letter, I'm not gonna call you to ask for it. If your offer is not the shiniest diamond or the diamond in the rough, I'm not gonna call you to ask for it. If you're in somewhat and you didn't send it complete, it's on you. You get me? So send all the supporting documentation. Because if not, you're wasting your time. You're doing a disservice to your client and wasting everybody else's time as well. Include closing date, home warranty, repair limits, and we talked about the addendums. Page 17 of that clock is completely messed up. Thought it was only the minutes, but the time, the hours are messed up too. All right. Page 17 has some scripts that are included for you, for your convenience, right? The first one is when a buyer wants the seller to make repairs. So what I'd like to do is for us to have a little bit of script and role play. So who would like to volunteer and read that script?
Mr. Ms. Buyer, until you have a physical inspection, we will not know how much these items will cost. And we could find additional repairs we may want to negotiate. Consequently, you have 3 choices. 1, you can offer the seller less money now to compensate for these items. 2, you can ask the seller now for a credit to repair these items using your own contractor. 3, or I usually advise clients to wait for the physical inspection and negotiate all repair items at one time. How would you like me to negotiate this offer on your behalf?
All right. So I'll give you a little sidebar on this. Anything visual, cosmetic that they want to ask for credits for, just reduce the offer price. Don't ask them to fix it. Okay? So hey, we're offering you less because there's some deferred maintenance, boom, 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 boom.
Is that after the offer's already been made?
No, I would submit it with the offer. Like explaining, right? Because I want to give as much information to the listing agent for them to understand why we're offering what we're offering. And I'm going to tell you why. Sometimes we take a listing that we feel maybe is a little overpriced or the seller just wouldn't budge, but you know that it's within a window that we're going to be able to sell it, right? And if I send that offer saying, Jacob, I know you're asking 500, but our offer is 490 because, the floors are, haven't been maintained or the floors might need to be replaced, etc. There's some deferred maintenance, appliances are old, blah, blah, blah. That's giving you as the listing agent ammunition, right? So when all your offers are coming in at 480, 490, etc., to be able to go to a seller and say, hey, Mr. Seller, this is the feedback that we're getting on the house, right? So we should consider this offer at 490.
But
Or-
as the buyer, for example, I give you a real life example, I'm under contract right now with a property that
Mhm.
was just inspected. And in the inspection, there's absolutely nothing wrong with like the air conditioner and the water handler.
Mhm.
but they're a bit dated, they could be changed.
Right.
They could be changed, but the offer was already presented. you know,
Well, that's different. You don't know the condition of the AC.
Right.
Right? I'm referring to, man, this carpet is dirty.
Mhm.
We're gonna submit an offer, go under contract, and then be like, hey, Jacob, we want a $2,000 credit because the carpets are dirty. Did you not look down when you were walking through the house? I mean, you already knew that.
So something like in this situation, not that it's a problem, it's not an issue, it's just more along the lines of like, if I could, can I use that knowledge that the inspector gave me based on, the inspection of the air conditioner could be changed and that the water handler could be changed?
It could. So
Could I
if
use that
your
in-
request, what is it that, let's get a little more specific. What
okay,
is it that you want to ask for?
So here we are in an FHA scenario, right?
Mhm.
Property is definitely not gonna appraise at what they want for the property. We know that already.
Okay,
We've all been aware of that across the board. So obviously.
careful with that.
Right, so obviously in this one,
I'm gonna tell you, because some of the results that we're getting on appraisals, I'm like, holy crap.
well, in this particular property, everything.
Okay,
New roof, new plumbing, it's got everything.
so AC, so what are we gonna ask for?
So what I was gonna say was like, okay, so the difference in price from what a potential appraisal could be based on comps in the area, right? And that above asking price value, could that be negotiated further?
Based on the AC,
Based on the AC?
you could ask,
Okay,
is the AC cooling right now?
frozen, yeah.
Frozen.
Yeah.
Okay, so my response would be, Jacob, the AC is cooling frozen,
Mhm.
right? So if your buyer maintains that AC as the seller has been, and that's why it's been able to last longer than the average of all the other people that don't take care of their AC and don't change the filter, and that's why they die in 7 years, then he should be good. I mean, it could die next month, but it could also last them 5 more years. So why should my seller give you a credit for something that's working?
I completely understand. this.
No, I'm telling you my rebuttal, right? So you know what to expect. Yeah, you could say it's past its life. We just got an inspection today. Same thing. The only item that was in red was AC is past its life expectancy, right? So you could say, hey, you know what? This is an investment that we're gonna have to make in the next 12 months or 6 months or maybe tomorrow. So we'd like a credit. It's just gonna be who's negotiating with you
So
on the other
I
side.
could pull that up in the event that it might.
You could. Yeah. Yes, sir.
When inspectors are trying to figure out like the remaining use of life of an item, like are they looking to find like an actual date, or they're gonna inspect items like, well, I think this should last 5 more years?
They're gonna look at when it was installed, and then they probably Google, or they got taught in whatever class they take and say average life expectancy of an AC in Miami is 7 years,
So somewhere.
or whatever it is. Yeah,
Somewhere on the AC, there will be a date of.
the date of installation, it should. I mean, some of them are like, they know how to read it, and the serial number codes and all that other stuff. Now, with a lot of stuff like that, here's what inspectors do, because technically they're not experts in every single item that's in the house, right? They just have a general understanding and through experience. So what they'll say is, AC is past its life expectancy, recommend having licensed AC technician inspect, and then they're gonna give you an average cost. So same thing with the roofer, same thing with everything else. But yeah, all those things that show up are points of negotiation. My recommendation is, because this is a relationship business, right? For your relations with the other agents. If there's cracks on the walls, if there's dirty carpets, ugly floors, whatever it is, don't submit a super aggressive offer over asking and all this other stuff, and then come back and ask for a whole bunch of repairs of things that were already noticeable, right? Because all you're doing is wasting time. You get me? And playing with people's emotions. Where now the seller's thinking, we picked your offer because it was 520. We had another one at 510. That was also very good. And now you're gonna ask me for $15,000 in credits? Nonsense. You saw that stuff. That's my personal preference on that.
By the true offer.
All right. When a buyer wants to make a lowball offer, we're not gonna, well, who would like to read that one? Let's go over that real quick, because this is reality in today's market.
Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, there are 3 ways to negotiate transaction. One, you can make a low offer and run the risk of the seller rejecting it or countering back at a full price to compensate. Two, you can make an offer closer to the asking price and be less flexible if there is a counter offer. Or three, if you really want this home and are concerned that another buyer may purchase it, you can make a full price offer and give the seller what they want. It's your choice. How would you like to negotiate this offer?
Okay, so that's how you present it, right? Line 3 is the most real and present in today's market,
Do you really
right?
want this home?
Because here's what could potentially happen. There's multiple offers, you may not get a counter, right? So now we learned how you kind of set the stage for these conversations through your buyer consult, right? Through Ignite, one of the previous sections. We should have learned about the must-haves form, right? Saying, hey, what must the home have, right? So if this is that one unicorn house that has everything you want, and realistically, if it has 4 of the 5 things they want or 8 of the 10 things they want, that's probably the right house for them, right? Then in today's market, let's take and
We'll
put
tell
our,
them where to make the offer.
thank you. That sounded a lot better than take and make our best
I saw you.
step forward, right? So make the most aggressive offer because you may not get a chance for a negotiation. Make sense? Any questions on that? Now, the reason why I wanted to read it, depending on who your buyer is, sometimes they need to lose that first or second offer. So they can understand that they need to be more aggressive. Right? So sometimes you're like, hey, we should offer, over appraisal. Oh, but I don't want to do that. But maybe offers that are winning are 10 to 15 grand now, or we're gonna offer 5,000 below asking price. Okay. In the end, they're the boss. You just do what they tell you, right? Probably gonna lose, not recommended. I feel good. I feel confident. You make the offer. Oh, somebody else got their bid. Oh man, then they need that letdown, right? It's kind of like when we were kids, when your parent was like, "Don't touch the fire because it's gonna hurt," and you were like, "I don't care," right? With the knives and the electrical outlets, it needs to happen sometimes, right? Right, and then you're like, "Oh no, don't do that," right? But you learned it yourself. All right, page 18. Present the offer to the listing agent. Call listing agent immediately to let them know your offer is coming. You can use text or you can use email. And you should be good. The second one, you can scratch that out. E-Edge is no longer a relevant piece of our business. All right, we review the offer. All right. Number 3, request a reply in the shortest amount of time that the market will allow. Right now, it's really seller-sided negotiations, so you want some sort of response, right? When it comes, it comes. Or you do want to follow up, make sure. The one thing I want you to know, make sure you get some sort of confirmation that the offer was received, right? Number 3, if the seller counters, consult with your buyer to either accept or counter offer the offer, or counter offer the counter offer. We already went over that in the earlier part of the training. Now, when your buyer's offer is countered and your buyer wants to recounter, it is important that you have a clear and proper perspective. So there's a script for that on page 18. And it says, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, by countering, the seller has essentially sold you the home for $200,000, right? This is what the example says. These people probably live in Cleveland. If we count, man, nobody got that joke, no reaction. Wow, that's scratching that one off. That one's coming off the list of jokes. No reaction to that. Or you're all sleeping, and that means that I suck as an instructor, so I won't volunteer for this anymore.
No.
I'm kidding.
Good, you're good.
If we counter at 195, we'll allow the seller to walk away from you or accept another offer in the interim. It is the risk of selling away your dream home for only $5,000. Are you okay with that risk? Right? Listen, clients, people, I include all of us in there. Sometimes we're so emotionally involved in the transaction that we let the stupidest things get in the way, right? The stupidest things. And we don't have to be stupid people, right? Attorneys, doctors, we're gonna put them at, hey, educated, they went to school for 97 years, or like $500,000 in student loans, right? Some of the most brilliant people, they're like, oh, but if I don't get that one 6-year-old stove, I'm not buying the house. Screw that, right? Yesterday, we were negotiating an offer for a buyer. This house literally checks every single thing that they want. We went and digged and found it off market. There's nobody competing. The seller countered to 549. We offer 540. The seller countered to 549. And our awesome buyer says, let's counter to 547. I'm like, cool. So you're gonna let 2 cups of Starbucks coffee that I see you drinking when we show properties get away from the home you want. Awesome.
But sometimes you have to say it to them like that. I mean, you can't even wait.
Of course. You know that that's 2 Starbucks coffees. Basically, worth of the month that you're walking away from at the rate that you're. Oh, okay, let's go ahead and accept.
So you gotta get in there and break it down so they can see it.
Because sometimes we get so fixated on little things and
I'm like that.
potentially walk away, right?
Yeah, but they might be seeing the K, the extra amount of K,
Uh-huh,
all in bulk sum.
I know.
So in their head, they're.
No, but that's what I'm
they're
saying.
like,
So that script helps you break that down. It's, yes, we get fixated on things. Understanding how the numbers work so you can break it down into granule, right? Yeah. All right, representing the seller. Where is it? I don't like these slides. They don't go with the stuff. There we go. Representing the seller. We're gonna receive an offer. We're gonna gather information. We're gonna present the offer to the client, and then we're gonna respond to the offer. Okay? Always thank the buyer agent for making an offer, even if it's a low one, right? Because you probably had 10 people go through the house that didn't make an offer. Those are the ones that we should be annoyed with, right? But the one that actually took the time to put the offer together, write it, sign it, send it in, even if it's not filled out properly, still cool. They took the time, right? And then let the buyer agent know that it's been received and that the sellers will be reviewing it. Important information that you should be aware of, okay, that could help in making a decision, mainly in negotiation. Bottom of page 19. How long has the buyer been looking for a home, right? In today's market, hey, how many other offers have you guys made? Is this the first offer that you guys present? Oh no, we really, really, really love this home. And this is the 7th offer we make. We lost all the other 6. This is the perfect house for them. You know, man, they would be distraught if we don't get this offer. If you're representing the seller, what did that sound to you? Work with, huh? No, I mean, no, that sounds like ding, ding, like the slot machine in Vegas.
I was just gonna say, you hit the mother
Right?
load.
Because, and so also take that information, right? Keep your emotions out of the deal. If you're representing the buyer and you call a listing agent and say, man, this is the perfect, it checks off every item that they're looking for. Man, they're so frustrated. We've been looking for 3 months, the whole spiel. All you're doing is taking all your negotiation leverage, putting it in a bag, and throwing it in the trash. Right?
And then we start your focus.
So how long have they been looking? Have they been pre-approved by lender? That's important. If I don't know the lender and it's a bank, mainly because their approval rates are low, I like to ask for lender contact info, and sometimes I'll call the lender myself. Do they have anything to sell? Very, very important. Okay. If they're from out of town, why are they moving to this area? Why did they select this particular property? Again, this is all giving you information that can leverage negotiation to your way. How How did you come up with your offer price? Now, if we send it ahead of time, then there's no need for that question. So you see how there's some value in sending that ahead of time. And have you made any offers in any of the properties? What happened? Now, this is important to us as a selling agent, because if the other agent says, yeah, you know, we made 3 other offers, we were actually under contract twice, but then one of them we canceled because of the inspection, and the other one we canceled because of this, that's giving you some red flags that, hey, maybe this buyer is not the most serious guy, right? Or maybe the condition of the property may be a problem for them. Let's address it now before we actually get on the contract, right? Any questions on that? No? All right, offer checklist, very similar to the buyer side, but we're gonna be looking at, make sure that the address is correct, make sure it says Pinecrest and not Palmetto Bay if the property is in Pinecrest. See how I'm emotionally touched by that? Make sure the price, the earnest money, time of acceptance, pre-approval or proof of funds attached, financing terms. I especially highlight the loan commitment period, make sure that it's less than your contract closing date. Closing date, the home warranty, conveyances, repairs, special clauses or contingencies, the HOAs, addendums if necessary, and the possession date, which is your actual day that you're giving the keys. Please understand, the house per contract has to be clean, free of trash and personal items the day of closing, ideally the day prior to closing. I emphasis on this because I get so many sellers that say, oh, so we close on Tuesday. When do I have to be out? Right? So don't let it be assumed that they understand that they need to be out the day of closing, right? Make sure that you emphasize on that. Second, make sure to remind them, don't cut off your electricity. If they happen to leave early, don't cut off the water and the light and all that stuff because it needs to be there for final inspection or final walkthrough, right? Because if the agent on the other side is doing a good job of representing their buyer, they're gonna wanna be able to check that all the appliances work and that when you go to the bathroom and you turn on the water, that actually water comes out, right? So that may delay your closing because they decided to cut off the electric. And if the property's in Homestead, Homestead Electric takes 2 to 3 days to reconnect the light. So you're gonna be delayed 2 to 3 days. Page 21, present the offer to your client. So first, we're gonna call a client. That has to be an extremely positive delivery, okay? Don't do what most agents do and they're gonna send an email to a client or a text with the offer stuff. Call them. You wanna drive that excitement. Jacob, congratulations, we just got an offer on your house. You have a few minutes to go over the details of the offer. I have that conversation, I go over all the details. Jacob, what's gonna happen next? I'm gonna send you a recap of all the important points of the offer, and I want you to review it and then initial and sign if you're ready, or let me know if you want to make any changes or counter offer or any questions you may have. Fair? Cool? Great. Right? It should always be congratulations, we just got an offer on your house. Or we just got the second offer or the third offer or whatever. Command has a really cool feature that you can actually plug in all the offers. Takes a little bit of time, but then it gives you an offer comparison. There's like a spreadsheet with columns and it compares one to the other. And it's a really nice visual for your sellers. So you can actually prepare that, print that out, call them and say, hey, I'm gonna send you an offer comparison, send it over, and then, hey, first offer this and this, second offer this and this, and you go over it that way. They present the offer in person to your client. That really doesn't happen anymore with technology. I mean, the clients don't even want to see you. They don't want to talk to you either. No, they do. Just kidding. But everything is done email, phone, Zoom, right? So present the offer to your client. Excuse me. Keep the tone of the conversation as positive as possible at all times. Never criticize the buyer, their agent, or their offer. Explain the offer, discuss The days on market, number of showings. So this part where it says discuss the days on market, number of showings, and review an updated CMA. It's really important when we're more in a buyer's market. Okay, or you have offers that are below asking price, because now we need to justify, hey, you know, days on, like right now, days on market in the MLS, I believe is 18 days, right? If you've been on the market 30 days, then you need to have that conversation, right? Kevin, properties on average are selling in 18 days. We've been on the market 30. This is the best offer we've had. We should accept it, right? Excuse me. So that's valuable information to have if you're past the limits. It's important to know your language of real estate for that reason. Man. All right, we talked about this earlier. Decision point, you're gonna accept, counter, or reject, depending on what you have on the table. Again, I never, ever recommend a client reject an offer. We always want to counter the offer. Let's turn to page 22. Excuse me. We have present the initial offer to the seller. Who would like to volunteer and read that first paragraph, please?
Good morning, afternoon. It's Robert with Keller Williams Realty. We have an offer here for you to review. I'm going to go through the offer with you. Is this a good time? Now, the offer came in with
350.
350 price. They're putting
10%, $10,000.
$10,000 as earnest money and 3% as a total down payment. They want to close on August 31st, and they're asking for 2% in repair limits. What do you think?
All right, so that would be how you deliver that. Initial key points, right? The only thing I would change, I would say congratulations, right? Right before the we. Now, the next script, excuse me, is when presenting a lowball offer. So you still have the same first paragraph, you go over that, then you say, now, I know that's a bit lower than asking price, but it's an offer. So we need to decide what we would like to do. My recommendation, let's counter to something that's acceptable to us. The last script at the bottom is encouraging the seller to accept the offer. So who would like to volunteer and read that?
I will urge you to consider this offer very carefully and consider the value of meeting your moving goals. In the long run, meeting your overall goal of selling your home is the more critical need, correct? The property has been on the market now for 30 days, and the average time in the market in the area is 18 days. Buyers are going to look at the same data. You're going to see that your neighbor's house sold for only
$325.
$325, and the house around the corner sold for $300. They're going to want to pay fair market value compared to these other sales. If you accept this offer, the probability of closing and meeting your goal is 100%. You want to meet your goal, right?
So let's talk about this one for a second. What aha did you take away from those 4 paragraphs of dialogue? What did the agent do there?
Educated their clients, that's for sure.
1.
And they laid out what the options are.
Okay. Looking for something else. Paragraph 1 and then paragraph 4.
Meeting their goals.
Okay. So yes, it helped.
Them to, yeah.
It brought them back to the objective of getting the house sold, right?
You always want to bring them back to
To what their goal is.
there's always going on, and they can get distracted.
Right.
Gotcha.
Okay. So 2 times we emphasized meeting your overall goal of selling your home, right? And then at the end, it was the probability of closing and meeting your goal 100%. You do want to meet your goal, right? What is the answer to that question? Yes and yes. There's no no there. If they say no, you got some serious problems,
They're paying with you.
right? All right. The next page. Recommend that your client make a counter offer. So who would like to read that?
We look at any offers of positive thing initially. We always recommend a counter offer instead of rejecting an offer. It may be that we can negotiate this up to review. Let's put together a solid counter offer. We need to get it back to them quickly to keep things rolling and see if we can make this offer work. I think the things to focus on here is the price you want to get for your house. Putting the offer aside, if you could get this home sold and closed in 30 days, what would you feel comfortable selling it for today? Let's put together a counter offer that would put us in the range we feel comfortable. Remember, not all offers are going to work, but it is a good sign that we're getting an offer. You've made this person's list of the house that they thought was one of the best homes for the money. I'll call the other agent and ask them how they can have this up first.
Okay, cool, thank you. I'm gonna emphasize on the last paragraph. See how we're now making them feel good that, hey, you made the list of one of the homes they felt was the best value, right? So it could take away any negative feelings around an offer being lower than we hoped. All right, page 24. We're gonna respond to the counter offer. So you have two choices. You can be extremely formal and make all the changes, check off counter offer, have your seller initial all the changes and send it back to the agent. Or you can call, your name? Robert. You can call Robert and say, hey, Robert, thank you very much for submitting the offer. My seller loved the offer with the exception of this and this that we want to counter to this and this. Does that work for you? I mean, you could do that via email also, but yet generally I'm going to call, have the conversation, and then send a recap email based on our conversation. Here's the counter terms that we're going to include, boom, 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 and then have my seller make the changes, initials, and then send it back for acceptance. Okay. There's a script on the bottom for that. We're going to skip. And we're going to go to page 26. Now we're going to set the stage for a positive negotiation. Okay, whether you represent the buyer or the seller, your goal is the same. It's to kick off a negotiation process that is positive, efficient, and ultimately is going to lead to a win-win agreement. Okay, those last three words in that paragraph are gold. You wouldn't believe the amount of times that we're having a conversation with another agent and they're a little combative because we are negotiating for opposite sides, right? But I'll say, Mercedes? No? Okay. Mercedes, listen, I totally understand you're looking out for the best interest of your client, so am I. But as professionals, let's work together to make it a win-win. Right? And that diffuses a lot of times, you know, how the conversation is going. Let's work together to make it a win-win so our sellers are happy, your buyers are happy, and we get paid. Cool? So, all right, so we're going to accept the offer. Ideally, the listing offer are priced right, the seller accepts the buyer's initials, moves directly into contract to close. So to answer your question, Robert, your seller signs and initials the offer the way it was presented. There's no changes made. I send it back to Kevin. When Kevin gets it, if it's still within that offer acceptance period, we are now officially under contract. Okay. You can reject. I would eliminate reject from your vocabulary, always counter. But essentially it will be the same thing. Seller rejects the offer, send it back. And then counter, we just kind of walk through that role play, but you're gonna cross out whatever you want to change, put the new information, have the seller initial, and then send it back to the buyer side for them to initial all the changes. Same thing goes the other way. If you have the buyer, whatever changes you cross out, put the new information, you send it back for acceptance. Little bonus tip at the bottom, while you can, excuse me, while you cannot control or predict the actions or decisions of your client or agent on the other side of the deal, you do have complete control over what you say and do in an effort to influence a positive negotiation process. Don't get emotional. Don't tell the other agent your client's right.
The question.
Or you guys are unreasonable. But
So you say obviously never to reject, always counter. So
Mhm.
what happens if you get like 10 offers, you gonna counter every single one?
no, if we're accepting one, we're gonna reject the others. But essentially, if you only have one,
Counter.
don't reject it, counter it, right? Here's a tip, especially in today's market. For whatever reason, and you may disagree with me on this, I'm just sharing what we do. You can, if you don't like it, that's cool, right? For whatever reason, we have come to this belief, right, that we shouldn't disclose the value of an offer because it's unethical. It's not necessarily true. We don't want to disclose the value of an offer because in a normal market or a buyer's market, if I tell Victoria, Verona knows right here. If I tell Victoria, Victoria, my highest offer is $390, and we're asking $400, right? What am I doing for my sellers' benefit there? Am I getting them the most money? Because Victoria will say, Mr. Buyer, the highest offer is $390, this offer is $391, high five, right? So we don't want to disclose that, right? But in the market that we're in today, right? If I tell Victoria, hey Victoria, I know we're asking 600, but my highest offer right now is 610. If you want a chance to win, you gotta offer more. Victoria turns around and goes to the buyer, hey, their highest offer is 610, right? So in order to get it, you gotta offer more, and they send an offer 615. What did I do for my seller? I got them more money, right? So it's on the responsibility of the buyer's agent to be proactive, engage and ask questions, right? I have agents that call me all the time. Hey man, my buyer really wants, they ding, 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 right? My buyer wants the house, it's a perfect house, willing to do anything. They'll sell one of their kids, a kid needs something. This is the house they want.
That could be my kid.
What do I need to do to get them this house? Jacob. My best offer is $20,000 over asking with guaranteed appraisal money. If the appraisal comes in short, they're guaranteeing to pay the difference. So if you want the house that bad, you need to be better. Right? That's a tip. That's how we're getting our sellers 106%, 107%, 108% of asking. Because the offer comes in at 500, then I put them to compete and we get 520. The offers come in at, we just have one right now in Kendall Breeze, we're asking 570, they're getting 606, 500. Right? And they, in writing, they're gonna pay the difference between contract price and appraisal. So if you get appraisal at 550, they're gonna pay $66,500 on top. Right? It is great. But what I'm sharing with you is, it's not unethical, it's smart negotiation.
Especially in this market.
You got me? So that's a tip. You didn't write it down? No big deal, but it's a tip. Yes, sir.
So say you present an offer 600, right?
Mhm.
And then Victoria's agent calls me like, hey, what's the best offer? I'm like, right now it's 600, you know.
Mhm.
Then Victoria's agent comes at 605.
Mhm.
Can I call?
If you call me, I'm gonna tell you my highest is 605. I'm eBay right now.
Yes, you're just going back to the hey, this one's went up
Yeah.
5,000.
Imagine it's basically like eBay,
Yeah.
right? And you said the bid right now is 50 cents for that 55-inch flat screen TV. I'm bidding $1, and you left it, right? But there's a person that bid $2, and a little bit later checked. Oh shit, the bids are $50 now, so I'm gonna bid $55, right? That's the way it is. I always encourage buyer agents, and have your client make their highest and best offer. That's gonna guarantee you that if you lose the house, that means that there was somebody out there crazier than you. That's kind of what it's like right now, right? And that's what I tell the buyers. What is the most you're willing to pay, and the most you're willing to put over appraisal, asking price, the most amount of kids you're willing to give up? You can always have another one. We forget about that. You can always have another one, right? This is being recorded. But what is the most you're willing to pay? That if somebody out there is willing to give more, they're like, dude, I'm good. That was just too much, right? So yeah, if your client wants the house that bad, here's pro tip, right? From the novice. You can always put an escalation clause, right? Here's what that looks like. We are offering 500,000. With an escalation clause to offer $1,000 more than any other offer, as long as the seller shows us a copy of the offer up to 520. Our offer is 500,000 with an escalation clause of $1,000 more than any other offer up to 520. So now he's saying, hey, I'm willing to pay you 500, but if you're getting all offers that are better, I automatically, it's kind of like eBay reserve, right? I'm gonna pay up to 70, whatever. So I'm willing to go up to 520, but I'm only willing to pay $1,000 more than the next best person. So that's one way that you can do that. So you don't have to call the listing agent a bunch of times. But you have to explain that to the listing agent, because sometimes they may not understand what that means. So just make sure that you.
Does escalation stand like close to like appraisal, like when you waive appraisal, if it's like the same offer, it's time to wait?
What do you mean?
Like if you have an escalation clause in the contract
Mhm.
that's representing a buyer, it has the same weight as if you're waiving the if the
Yeah,
number.
it's really all on that. That's subject to how valuable it is to the seller. So when you say waive appraisal, it's still contingent on financing, right?
Correct. Well, if you have a contract price of 500, they're waiving the appraisal, they're willing to pay you the difference.
Right. Technically, but if they get denied, but if they get the loan denied because the appraisal came in too short and they don't have the money to make
Then
up the
it does,
difference,
yeah.
then. So here's what I say. If you're willing to waive appraisal, right? Essentially, we're making this offer non-contingent on financing. So I would include language in it that says offers contingent on financing, with the exception of the appraisal coming in too short and the buyer not having enough funds. And that's for me to protect the seller. You get me? Because technically it's still contingent on financing. So they could get a denial letter that says, oh, they were willing to pay, but they got denied. All right, page 27. Customer experience focus. Recognizing that the customers come first is among Keller Williams Realty 9 core beliefs in the WI4C2Ts. Do we have a slide for that? There it is. And now I think there's an WI4C2Ts, and then there's another letter that they added. I don't remember that one. Essentially, put your customers' objective, desires, wants, and needs before your own. Essentially, that's what that says. Okay. set the right foundation for a win-win negotiation and a subsequent closing. Now, I'm gonna tell you, as an agent, here's the easiest way for you to be able to negotiate and be able to do that, right? Put your client's needs first before your own, no matter what. That's to have many clients. Okay? If you only have one, and you think, I'm good because I have this one, right? There might be things that happen throughout the process that a decision has to be made that it means that that deal is not going to close, but it's the best decision for your client, right? And if you only have that one, and you need to pay your car, your mortgage, feed your family, and all this other stuff, because we are human, then you have a really tough decision,
Humor me,
right?
you don't wanna be in that position.
And we're all great people and we have the best intentions, but survival kind of kicks in, right? And sometimes then you have this highly critical decision. Am I going to be ethical, or am I gonna
If it's real estate,
feed my family and keep them housed and all that other stuff, right? So the right thing to do is to be ethical and do the best thing for your client. All I'm telling you is make sure you have more than one, so you don't have to be in that position and make that decision. Okay? Often in negotiations, the guy who doesn't have anything to lose wins. And a lot of times, like this one that I just told you, where this agent recommended the buyer to pay over appraisal, whatever the appraisal amount is. I don't know if that's the best advice for that client, but I have a seller, whatever that guy's advising that side, too bad, so sad. Yet, you know what I'm saying? You want to make sure that you're making the best decisions for them. Sometimes the agents want the deal more than the actual client. And there's a lot of times reasons behind it, and sometimes there's financial pressure. Don't get yourself into that nonsense. Get more than one client, and you do that by showing up. Any questions? Nothing? I must be like really thorough.
you're good, you're really good. When is bathroom break?
Right now, if you want.
Thank you.
You guys, 5 minutes? Is that good?
That works.
Like you guys could stretch, wake up, we'll do some jumping jacks? No? All right, we're gonna take 5 minutes and then we're gonna come for the home stretch. See if we get you guys back up and at it at 12. So it's 11:35, be here by 11:40, please.
Hi, Mr. Renee, this is Jacob. I just got in contact with you via text about 30 minutes ago. I called you earlier this morning in reference to the property you have for sale. Please give me a call back, 786-805-8720. It's super awesome. Again, my name is Jacob. I'm a Keller Williams agent. You can call me back 786-805-1720 in reference to the property that we just spoke about. Thank you, sir. Hi, my name is Jacob. I'm calling about the property you guys have available. Is that still available? You guys sold it. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Hi, my name is Jacob. I'm calling about the property available. Is that still available? Oh, yeah, multiple. That's great. 1869 Southwest. So have you guys received any offers on that property? Oh, wow. Okay, great. It shows here that you have it listed on Zillow since '6, so you guys did list the property down? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So you were saying you just got your real estate license?
June 22nd, I got it. And
Cool.
this is something I always wanted to do. And I was just telling her, now that I'm doing it, it's a lot. I didn't know it was so much. I love it. It's definitely something I want to keep doing. Pero yeah, es mucho. You have to mentally prepare for it.
So, I was gonna say a silly.
Say it.
People don't realize the amount of work that we do. And I didn't either before. I used to be in lending. And I used to tell the agency, like, bro, all you did is freaking open a door and blah, 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 and you're putting all this pressure on us to, to close the deal. But we do a lot.
It is a lot. And I've been just like the last few weeks, I just started here July 6th, just organizing myself so I don't fall on my feet. And learning the KW programs and learning the MLS and everything because son tantas cosas que fácilmente me confundo.
Can I share something with you?
Yeah.
Buy a helmet. And then go as fast as you can and fall on your face a bunch of times.
Really?
That's the only way we
Me
learn.
tiro.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the advice.
Since when I got my real estate license, I spent the first 9 months creating a website. Like, the
Really?
stupidest decision I could have ever made. But I wasn't here when I got my real estate license.
You were someplace else.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I was gonna say. Even with all the help and all the support that KW provides, I can't understand how other people do it at other companies. Because it's still overwhelming. And they give us pretty decent amount of support here. Like,
Yeah. And it's not like, and look, I'm not the believer of KW is the best place for everybody. I believe you,
what fits for you. what
yeah,
works for you.
the stuff that we are taught here is, it really sets you up for success if you take advantage. All right, 11:42. Now how we put it all together, right? So there's many resources in the market center. There's many resources through the board. There's many resources through online for you to find out how to do CMAs. You can get the contracts, review them. Like I said, my recommendation, get an offer or get a contract or the multiple contracts, read them, highlight what questions or what paragraphs or things you don't understand, and find somebody to ask questions. You can also call the Frank Legal Hotline, and they'll probably give you the most,
That's it.
the best, well, they're gonna give you the best legal answer to your questions, right? Not opinions. So there's also that resource available for you to be able to get clarification on what the contract language says. My other suggestion, role play it. Sell your house, sell your parents' house, sell your sister's house, right? And what I mean by that is prepare an offer like if you're buying it, present it to yourself, review it, counter it, etc. When you're going through the motions, what it actually looks like, right? Practice your scripts and prepare for the next class. And you're gonna do that by downloading the paperwork. You will have, or you should have, at the end of your material, the mission for the next class. No, I went too far. You should have the mission for the next class. So you're gonna do your Deadly 10-4. Listen, I think I shared some good, valuable information. If you disagree, I don't care. No, I'm just kidding. I shared some valuable information. You probably heard some valuable information in the other sessions as far as material, what to say, who to say, etc. But as I mentioned at the beginning of class, all that stuff is really, really cool. The biggest nugget that you can take away from this class is your 10-4. 10 contacts, 10 notes, add 10 people to your database, right? And 3 to 10 homes a week, right? The whole purpose of that activity is to get you into the habits of taking action, right? There's a saying that says that the richest place in the world is a cemetery. Because there's a ton of people that die with a whole bunch of ideas that they never put into action, right? So all this wealth of knowledge that you're learning from the material is awesome, but if you don't take action, it's worth it. Fall on your face with a helmet so you don't break your face, but do it as often as you can, right? If you read, if you educate yourself, find whoever you look up to, right? And you'll probably find that the one common denominator that they have is that they failed more often than others. So that's what I would recommend. So daily 10-4. Practice script with your role play partner. And if you don't have one, I believe Christina is doing role play sessions early in the morning. You can go on Facebook. There's probably 10, 15, 20 different Facebook groups around role play. You can find a role play partner there. You can find somebody else in the office, etc. There's a video on preparing on negotiating. It's 27 minutes long in KW Connect. There's another resource about getting antiquated with common negotiation issues for you to download and just get ready for your next session. So what questions, concerns, ahas, ideas, etc. that you would like to discuss?
Besides the Ignite material?
The Ignite ones are great. There's also, I believe, if you go to maps.com, you can get scripts from Maps. You can go to Mike Ferry or one of the ferries.com and you can get scripts there. Here's what I'm going to tell you about scripts. The scripts are great, but if you don't practice them and internalize them, you're going to sound like caca, right? So find it, practice it, internalize it, and then when you convey them with confidence, it's when you really start to see the power of the script, right? So we often will have a script, we'll practice it, and then we don't get the results we want, right? Because we want to dial the phone and then we want 99 sellers to say, yeah, come on over and list my house out of 50 calls we made, right? Then we go, man, this script doesn't work. And then we look for the next one. And somebody then tells you the same script, but they put a little bit of sprinkle on top and you're like, man, that's the one. This one sounds really good. Then you go do the same thing and the same results, right? And then somebody got the same script with the sprinkle and then put a little bit of icing on top. And you're, oh man, this one is even better. And then we go and call 50 people and you don't get the results. And then we always look for the next script, right? All these scripts are great. And I can tell you that the ones that are, most of the ones that are written through the material that KW teaches us have a lot of embedded commands and words that we say with intention right? And it's just, we don't practice that. We live play, right? So you have a bunch at your disposal. I would just, my recommendation is start practicing them. You know? Great question though. And here's what I'll say. We have 15 minutes, 11 minutes, right? You guys probably have a question that maybe you don't want to ask because you're embarrassed or might think it's silly or whatever, that maybe somebody else in the room has the same question and wants an answer to, but is thinking the same, or share some feedback, ideas, challenges, etc., because we all get to learn from that. Cool? So what do you guys want to talk about for the next 11 minutes? I'm letting you off early. Nothing? We get to leave now? Yes, sir.
Your total sales, that you in the MLS, is that your entire group?
There might be a few missing, but yeah, they all report under me.
Got it.
But some on the buyer side, sometimes the other agents don't put me on the credit side or don't give me credit for it. So
So, if I was to add up every single person in your group, that should come more or less within range.
if you want to do all that work, yeah. But yeah, there's probably a handful that are missing, but most of them should be there. However, if you're looking at the MLS reports, right? For whatever reason, it doesn't match what we actually do. If you want a more accurate picture, look at the KW reports.
Okay, that's your command,
You should be able to get there,
or the MyKW.
my KW.
I already told you I'm scared cat, so get aside. But I know I need to do it. Who do I talk to in the office that can sign up and do like open houses? Kind of crew can often do open house on the weekend.
So
I know that's the way for you to.
I highly encourage you to do that. Okay. Now, I don't want to sound,
Be real. just straight
no,
up.
I'm being real. For us, because we are a decent sized group, we always have coverage for the open house. And we understand the power behind the open house for us as agents, not so much the seller. It's about 1% of the houses get sold at an open house, but we understand the power of the open house for us as agents. So we leverage that for us to get more business. So when you ask me if you want to do an open house for us, the answer is going to be no, right? Because the newer agents in our team are doing those activities for them to get business. However, there's a lot of agents that look at the stat and go, 1% of houses are sold at an open house. I'm not going to do it. I don't see the value. They don't lead generate. They don't prospect around that house. Therefore, they don't do it. So if you come and say, hey, Jacob, I'd love to do an open house for you and provide value to your seller, they'll probably say yes. So how do you do that? You can see who has listings in the office and go ask, or you can ask Christina, see if maybe she has some people that have, there's definitely a lot of value. And here's the tip on that. The 2 or 3 hours that you're at the open house is not where the nuggets are. Okay? The nuggets are in understanding, I'm doing an open house in this house on Saturday, and today's Tuesday. So today I'm gonna call 100 neighbors and let them know that we have a house for sale in the neighborhood, and find out if they have somebody that wants to move in so they can pick their neighbor before we pick it for them. Or more than likely, we're gonna have more than one buyer that wants to buy this house in today's market, and only one gets to buy the house and the others 5, 6, or 7 get to cry in their soup. So if they want to get top dollar for their home, you know, we'd love to talk to them about that possibility, right? You also want to go and door knock the 5 houses to the left, 5 houses to the right, and the 10 across the street, and introduce yourself, collect information so you can stay in contact with them, right? You also want to call everybody in your database that is a potential buyer, right? So we classify them as nurture, watches, and hots, or somebody has identified they want to buy a home and you want to promote that. you want to go in command and do an ad for that open house to collect some additional leads. That's where the value is. The 2 hours that you're at the house, it's not the most value, right? And so we hold open houses now, and we hold their showings till the open house. So it's really like it's like showings. We'll have 35 visitors, 32 will come with an agent, and then we have 3 that feel that working with the listing agent directly is the best way to go, because they read somewhere online that says, hey, go to the listing agent directly because they get to keep all the commission, and therefore, you're gonna get a better deal. And in Miami, that holds true in some cases because we get greedy. Yet, if the listing agent is doing the right thing, they'll let the buyer know that they have no representation because they're representing the seller. So yeah, we'll write the offer for you, but we're not gonna negotiate anything on your behalf. So we do pick up some buyers, but it's a very small percentage of buyers from that. Most of the nuggets come from the activities. What I'm saying is, don't sit on your hands after they tell you, yeah, hold the open house on Saturday, and the whole week you're sitting on your hands just waiting to put signs on Sunday. Yep. What else?
Do you have the winning lotto numbers?
Nope, I don't play lotto. And if I did, I'd be fishing right now.
What numbers, what statistics are most important to you that you look at a daily basis?
So we track active listings, we track active, and I look at really single family homes. We don't really look at condos, but you should look at both. Actives, new listings, pendings, closed, expired, withdrawn, and canceled. I bunch it into one. Price reductions, and that should be 5 or 6 already.
6.
Yeah. And then if you want to know about the rates, you can track rates. We get that from Google, current mortgage rate, and Freddie Mac will probably be one of the top results, and it will give you historical. Well, we track that week to week, not daily. So we see a weekly trend, and then we also track it month to month. So we have 2 graphs around that. You're welcome. So there, and I'll tell you why we track some of those. Obviously, we want to know how much inventory there is, right? We want to know how much is pending. The new number versus the number that's going out, the number that's going pending, is telling you, is there more coming than there is going, right? So that's kind of giving you a foresight of, is our inventory growing or depleting? Price reductions will usually tell us, are we getting hotter or are we getting colder? Right? Right, for whatever the reasons may be. Like I can tell you based on conversations I have with other agents and tracking that number, that the market is cooling down just a little bit, right? Now we're still selling over asking, and we still have multiple offers, but we're going from like 17 offers to about 8, right? And people are not so quick to throw money over appraisal and all that. So we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown there, but this is just kind of letting us know what's coming. We're so deep into a seller's market that it's gonna take some big correction or something drastic to happen for it to change quickly. That's a good question.
So, I'll go back to it.
Okay. What other questions do we have? Nothing? Cool. You guys find value? Learn something? Cool. Should I come back?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Please do.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for your time.
People abroad, thank you for attending. You can go back to sleep. I'm just kidding. Oh, somebody wrote, sorry. Where is it? The chat?
It's me just saying thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for
Thank you
being,
so much.
for allowing me to make fun of you guys.
Awesome. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. And I'll say this lastly, if there's anything at all that you guys need, we're We're the office over there in the corner. You're more than welcome to come and ask any questions. You want to shadow, you're welcome to come shadow. You want to sit there and listen at any time. Usually my door is closed or the door there is closed because we do get very distracted. So that's why the door is closed. But I think I said, if you were here yesterday, was it yesterday? 2 days ago? A great deal of the success that we have, and we're still at toddler stage, but a great deal of the success is because somebody has shared with us and, you know, gave us information and extended their hand and helped us move forward. So we like to pay it forward and do the same for you guys. Cool? All righty. The weekend officially starts right now.